How would you react if you saw a young black girl, just 11 years old, being handcuffed in the middle of a bank lobby, simply because she didn't look like she came from money? No shouting, no violence, just a suspicious glance from a security guard, a single wrong decision, and a little girl with trembling hands asking, "I was just looking for my mom. What did I do wrong?" The story you're about to watch isn't an episode of a drama series. It's real. It happened. And it was hidden for weeks until a leaked video on social media brought an entire nation to silence. A child left with emotional scars. A mother forced to speak out, not as a victim, but as the very person who once designed the building that humiliated her daughter. And from that moment, a system was forced to change, from the ground up. This is not just a story about discrimination. It's a reminder that justice doesn't always arrive with the sound of a gavel. Sometimes it begins with the voice of a child. Tuesday, 3:07 p.m. The weather in Denver was nearly perfect for anything that began with hope. The sky was bright blue, the sunlight warmly gentle, and the wind rustled softly through the trees lining Evergreen Avenue, creating a calming rhythm. 14-year-old Maya Coleman stepped off the city bus at stop number 6, right in front of the grand building of Maple Hill Bank, the central bank serving the upscale neighborhood in the western part of the city. In her backpack, she carried a carefully sealed cream-colored envelope containing exactly $960 in cash, along with a neatly arranged set of documents: her student ID, birth certificate, a recommendation letter from Kensington Prep, and a jade green floral birthday card from her grandmother. Maya had been preparing for this day for the past 2 months, not because her mother asked her to, but because she wanted to prove something important, that she was mature enough to manage her own finances. Nothing marked the start of a new age more clearly than opening a bank account by oneself. She had looked up how to open a miner's account, written down the requirements, and even practiced her speaking in front of a mirror to sound confident. Everything about today was hers alone, with or without her mother. Serena Coleman, Maya's mom, had always taught her to be independent, even with the smallest tasks. But what was unique was that Maya had no idea who her mother really was in the real world. To Maya, she was just Mom Serena, the woman who wore white shirts every morning, drank black coffee, drove an old SUV to parent-teacher meetings, made the best spaghetti in the world, and preferred canvas tote bags over designer purses. Maya had no clue that Mom Serena was in fact Dr. Serena Coleman, a high-level financial investor and a major shareholder in more than 7 financial institutions, including the very bank Maya was about to walk into. She didn't know that the neighborhood she lived in, with its autumn red trees and automatic iron gates, had been designed by one of her mother's company branches, and she had never questioned why she was raised to live simply, to ride the bus instead of having a driver, or to shop at Target instead of Chanel. Maya thought her family was doing okay, just like her mom always said. They simply lived okay. But that version of okay was actually a perfectly crafted disguise for one of the most financially powerful families in the western United States. Standing in front of the revolving glass doors of Maple Hill Bank, Maya took a deep breath. She looked over her outfit, a white collared shirt with her school's logo, a navy pleated skirt, knee-high socks, and a pair of polished black shoes. Everything was in place. She pushed the door open, her heart filled with pride and a touch of innocent nervousness. Inside the bank, the atmosphere was calm. An elderly woman was signing papers at the VIP counter, a man in a gray suit was consulting with an advisor, and at the far end, behind teller counter number 3, sat a white woman with neatly tied blonde hair and a tense expression glued to her computer screen. Renee, the customer service associate. Seeing no one waiting in line, Maya walked toward the counter and offered a polite smile. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm here to open an account for under 18 customers. I brought all the required documents." Renee looked up. Her expression briefly shifted to confusion when she saw a young black girl, dressed in a school uniform, holding a cash envelope at the counter. Her eyes scanned Maya quickly from head to toe, then stopped at the envelope. "Did you schedule an appointment?" Her voice was cold and dry like sand. "No, ma'am," Maya answered. "I saw on the website that you accept walk-ins, so—" "What's in that envelope?" Renee cut in. Maya froze for a moment, then answered. It's my birthday money and savings. I'd like to deposit it into the account. How much? $960, ma'am. Renee closed her laptop and looked at the girl as if she had said something utterly absurd. Where did you get that kind of money? Maya began to feel uneasy. Um, from my grandmother and from helping out at the community library. I can show you the card from my grandma or... Wait here. I'll call the manager. That sentence felt like a cold wind slicing through Maya's school uniform. She didn't know what she had done wrong. Hadn't she brought everything? She opened her folder and carefully laid the documents on the counter, like cards in a game of honor. Her student ID with a bright smile in the photo, her laminated birth certificate, a signed early release note from the principal, and a jade green birthday card with her grandmother's gentle handwriting. To my smart little girl, may you always walk tall. Deposit this like the grown-up girl you are. But none of it brought Renee back with a smile. Instead, the sound of high heels clicked sharply against the granite floor. A woman in a black suit holding a clipboard approached. What's your name? Maya Coleman, ma'am. How old are you? 14, ma'am. Who gave you that exact amount of money? My grandma. And I also earned some from... That's enough. I'm Darlene Whitaker, the branch manager. And I believe you're lying. That wasn't a statement. It was an accusation. Maya stood frozen. Darlene leaned toward the envelope and gently pried it open with her pen tip. Seeing the neatly stacked $100 bills, her eyes narrowed. A 14-year-old doesn't have this kind of cash unless it came from somewhere illegitimate. I've been in this industry for over 15 years. I know the scent of fraud when I see it. Maya began to stammer. But it's really my money. I can call my mom. No need. We'll call someone more appropriate. And with that, she turned to her desk and picked up the phone. I need to report a suspicious activity. A young girl is attempting to deposit nearly $1,000 in unverified cash, possibly linked to fraud or money laundering. Maya felt like she was being shoved out of reality. No one in that room stood up. No one asked to see her documents. No one noticed the teary eyes of a child trying to prove her honesty. And so, the only thing Maya could do was lower her head, take out her phone, and send a message. A simple, short sentence, full of fear, yet powerful enough to spark the coming storm. Mom, I'm at Maple Hill Bank. They said I stole the money. I'm scared. Please come. The atmosphere inside Maple Hill Bank, usually described as friendly, professional, and customer-oriented, now felt completely drained of life. The chill didn't come from the air conditioning, but from the glances of the adults pretending to be busy, from the way they looked and then looked away, as if the presence of a black girl in a school uniform inside the bank was a system error. Maya stood still, her eyes fixed on the service desk where Darlene was speaking on the phone. Every word from the woman poured directly into Maya's ears. Suspected fraud, no clear legal reason to possess cash, need urgent police assistance. These words weren't just wrong, they carried a crueler implication. Maya didn't belong here. Not with that amount of money, not with that skin color, not with a polite voice that didn't carry enough authority to make anyone pause and listen. When Darlene hung up, she turned around, arms crossed, staring at Maya as if she were a young criminal caught red-handed. The police will be here in 10 minutes. In the meantime, you are not allowed to leave. Maya tried to stay calm, her throat dry. May I call my mom? She knows about this. She's also a customer here. Oh, really? Darlene smiled, but there was nothing kind in that smile. What's your mother's name? Serena Coleman. Never heard of her. Maya swallowed. You could check the system. I don't need to check anything. Darlene cut in, her voice as hard as stone. What I see is a girl carrying a wad of cash with a story that doesn't add up and a pile of documents that are easy to fake. When I was your age, I didn't even have $20 in my pocket. I'm not lying. You think I'm naive? Darlene stepped closer, her gaze colder than a winter afternoon. I've seen plenty of sweet kids like you. They all start with "it's my money" and end with a call from juvenile detention. I've worked in this industry for over 20 years. Trust me, I know your type. Maya stood frozen like a statue, as if she had just been slapped with words. Your type. That phrase, though indirect, was loaded with meaning. Not the kind of person who opens a bank account. Not the kind of person who walks in here without raising suspicion. Not the kind of person who belongs in a space with gleaming glass walls, shiny leather chairs, and employees in pressed uniforms. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. You don't have to be like anyone else. Just be yourself. But now it was being herself that had her under suspicion. Renee returned to the counter, speaking quietly to Darlene, but loud enough for Maya to hear. Told you. The moment I saw her, I knew something was off. Darlene nodded. They know how to act polite, well-trained. The sweeter they sound, the more likely there's a problem. Maya felt like she was no longer in a bank, but in a shadow courtroom, where judgment had already been passed, where every attempt to explain was twisted into an excuse. She tried again. I can show you my student ID, a previous savings account statement, a letter from my school confirming I was allowed to leave class today. Darlene didn't even look. That's enough. I'm not obligated to process your transaction. This is a financial institution, not a community center. A male customer nearby glanced over, then quickly walked away. Another employee at counter number 2 looked uneasy, but no one intervened. Maya was learning a harsh lesson, that in many situations, silence isn't neutral. It's complicit, that no one says anything when someone most needs to be heard. From the glass doors, Maya saw a police cruiser pull up outside the bank. Her heart pounded in her chest, not because she had done anything wrong, but because it was the first time in her life she felt completely misplaced. A uniformed officer walked in, followed by a woman. Both looked at Maya as if she were a confirmed target. Darlene stepped forward to greet them. She's the one. She brought in a suspicious amount of cash, refused to provide credible proof, and has been uncooperative. I didn't refuse anything, Maya burst out, her voice louder than she expected. I gave her all the documents. She wouldn't look at them. Officer Langford glanced at Darlene, then turned to Maya, his expression no less skeptical. What's your name? Maya Coleman. How old are you? 14. Where are your parents? My mom. She's at work. I texted her. Can you show me the message? Maya pulled out her phone. Before she could hold it up, Darlene interrupted. I don't recommend allowing her to keep contacting people before we verify her identity. I just told my mom. How many messages did you send? Langford asked, his tone flat. Just one. One sentence. That I'm being held here. I didn't do anything wrong. Was there any witness to the person giving you the cash? Maya bit her lip. My grandma. But she lives in Florida. So no. Darlene smiled smugly. Everything is hearsay, no proof. Maya felt like she couldn't breathe. Every word she spoke was twisted. Every document she brought now seemed invisible. The trust she had in fairness vanished like vapor. And then she remembered something her mother once said, now clearer than ever. Not everyone will believe you, no matter how hard you try. But there was still one thing Maya believed. Her mom would come. She always came. The silence inside the bank was no longer the quiet lull of pending transactions, but the suffocating stillness of something about to spiral out of control. Maya stood frozen as the 2 police officers approached, their eyes carrying not the investigative curiosity of doubt, but the unwavering certainty of a target identified. Darlene stood with her arms crossed, her face betraying a quiet satisfaction, as if the scene unfolding was playing out exactly as she had scripted. This is the girl, Darlene declared, not waiting for anyone to question or verify. What's your name? The male officer asked, eyes fixed on the envelope of cash. Maya Coleman, she replied, her voice trembling. Can you tell me where this cash came from? It's birthday money from my grandmother and payment from my job. I can show you the birthday card, my timesheet, and the library ID where I work if needed. No need, Darlene interrupted, her voice dry and sharp. We've asked her 3 times, no convincing answers. All the documents she brought can easily be forged. Maya turned to the other officer, a woman in her 30s with a sturdy build. Her name tag read Santos. Ma'am, I have a letter from my school approving early dismissal, a statement from my old savings account, and a student ID with my photo. I can call my mom. She's a customer here. What's your mother's name? Serena Coleman. Santos looked at Darlene. Is that name in the system? No one with that name has a significant account here. Maybe a standard one, if anything. but nothing credible. Maya felt as if someone had slammed into her chest. She had never had to prove her mother's worth before. She had never imagined that her mother, the woman she always thought of as ordinary, could be dismissed so easily. But something worse was coming. You are being temporarily detained for investigation regarding possession of cash with unclear origin, Officer Langford said in a mechanical tone, like reading from a manual. We'll take you to the station for processing. If you have a legal guardian, they will be contacted afterward. No, I haven't been allowed to make a call. I need to call my mom right now. You'll get to call after intake is complete, Santos replied as she reached for the handcuffs. Maya instinctively stepped back. I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted to open a bank account. I did everything right. This isn't the time for debate. Put your hands behind your back, Langford ordered coldly. You have the right to remain silent. I won't be silent. I need someone to hear me, Maya shouted, tears spilling uncontrollably. But no one stood by her. Other customers glanced over. Some whispered. An elderly woman shook her head with pity. A man pulled out his phone but didn't dare raise it. Everyone saw, but no one stepped in. The metallic clink of the handcuffs echoed through the luxurious bank lobby like the most out-of-place and brutal sound Maya had ever heard. The world around her seemed to slow down. Each stare, each furrowed brow, each overhead light reflecting off the polished white tile twisted into a surreal blur. She was being led away, treated like a criminal, handcuffed, wearing a school uniform, holding a birthday envelope. Overwhelmed by emotion, Maya made one final move. While Santos was momentarily distracted checking her bag, Maya quickly tapped on the phone she had hidden in her sleeve. Mom, they're putting handcuffs on me. Please come now. The message sent just 1 second before Santos noticed. Give me the phone. Maya handed it over quietly, her eyes still brimming. I only texted my mom. I didn't call anyone. Santos said nothing, slipping the phone into her uniform pocket. Darlene stood behind them, nodding in approval. I'll draft a report on the incident. Hopefully we can verify the source of the money soon. Maya was led out of the bank under the gaze of customers who had never spoken to her, never asked her side, never paused. There was only silence, and a few murmurs. That's a shame, but who really knows? Didn't look like that kind of kid. Kids these days, they're good at pretending. The bank doors closed behind her. Maya was shoved into the back seat of the police car. Her hands were still cuffed, her heart still racing, and one thought echoed in her mind. If Mom doesn't get here in time, who will they turn me into? Across the city, Serena Coleman still didn't know what was happening, but the phone in the pocket of her blazer was about to buzz, and when it did, a chain reaction would begin. One that would change the lives of not just Maya, but everyone who chose not to listen. The 42nd floor of the Coleman Capitol building was always silent in a way that felt commanding. Every footstep echoed on the walnut wood floor, reflecting an unspoken discipline that everyone entering the space instinctively followed. Inside the oval-shaped boardroom, spanning more than 1,300 square feet, 6 senior executives were presenting the end-of-quarter analysis. Profit graphs blinked on the massive LED screen, and the hum of the projector sounded like a ventilator in a surgical room for corporate strategy. At the head of the table, Serena Coleman sat quietly, her hand resting lightly on a leather-bound folder embossed with the Sterling Capital Division logo, her sharp gaze skimming each chart as if she had memorized them long ago. With neatly styled curls, a tailored navy blue suit, and a delicate strand of pearls accenting the collar of her white blouse, Serena didn't need to speak much to make it clear who held authority in the room. She was the embodiment of silent power, the kind of woman who could pause a 9-figure deal just by setting down her pen. But what Serena didn't know was that, while she was tracking Q4 growth numbers, another number, short, shaky, was lighting up the screen of the phone in her blazer pocket. The message held just 8 words. Mom, they're putting handcuffs on me. Please come. No emojis, no typos, no extra spaces. Just 8 words that landed like a gut punch. Serena pulled out her phone reflexively. For a second, she thought she had misread. But there was no mistake. The sender was Maya, and the status, sent 1 minute ago, glared clearly on screen. In the first 3 seconds, her mind went blank. By the fourth, her instincts as a mother overrode every ounce of her CEO logic. By the fifth, she was already on her feet, her chair sliding back behind her. Every eye in the boardroom turned to her. Thomas, the strategy director, stopped mid-presentation. Chairwoman Coleman, is something wrong? Serena didn't respond immediately. She locked eyes with Thomas, then swept her gaze around the table. Her voice wasn't raised, wasn't cold, but it froze the room. The meeting is over. Someone just made a very serious mistake. No one dared to speak. She walked toward the door, phone clutched tightly in her hand, her other hand already scrolling through contacts. First call, David Chen, her personal legal advisor. When he picked up, she said just 5 words. Maple Hill Bank. Meet me there. Next, Robert Lane, head of high-security operations at Sterling Holdings, a former police captain. Bring the team to Maple Hill. Don't be late. Serena didn't need to elaborate. Everyone she contacted knew the unspoken code. When she used no names, no pronouns, it meant a family-level emergency, the highest alert in her command system. The elevator moved like it understood who was inside. When the doors opened to the ground floor, her driver James was already waiting, the charcoal Bentley parked right at the curb. To the bank? Maple Hill. Floor it like you're carrying a heart transplant, and don't ask me anything. As the car raced through intersections, Serena placed a third call. Charles Morrison, chairman of the board of Maple Hill Bank. Appointed by her father in the 90s to protect the family's financial interests, Morrison was one of the few who had known Serena since her intern days. Charles, Serena said, her voice trembling for the first time that day, one of your people just called the police on my daughter. Silence. I haven't heard anything. Maya Coleman, 14 years old. She brought her savings to open an account. She was deemed suspicious. She's in handcuffs. Dear God, I'm on my way. Will you arrive before me or after? Before. I'm leaving now. Serena ended the call, her eyes fixed out the window like they could slice through every building passing by. For the next 20 minutes, no one in the car spoke. James drove like he truly was transporting a living heart. Robert, in the passenger seat, was already connected to the security network. Attorney Chen was pulling up state and federal codes on juvenile detainment and financial racial profiling. Serena didn't ask a single question. She just stared at her phone, stared at those 8 words. Mom, they're putting handcuffs on me. Please come. And in her chest, each heartbeat struck deeper into the memory of a mother who had wielded every form of power, except the power to stop the world from hurting her daughter when she wasn't there to protect her. Outside the Maple Hill Bank, a sleek gray Bentley pulled up with the quiet precision of an unspoken warning. The license plate was simple but unmistakable, CH-0001. Those in the financial world knew exactly what the letter stood for. Coleman Holdings, one of the most influential conglomerates in the western United States, and a major shareholder in at least 3 banks within a 50-mile radius. James, the driver, stepped out first and opened the rear door. Serena Coleman emerged, her square-heeled pumps striking a measured, deliberate rhythm, unhurried, but with not a second of hesitation. She wore a custom jade green suit, the collar slightly high, a small handbag in her left hand, and a silver watch on her right wrist. Behind her walked attorney David Chen, white shirt, ash gray tie, composed face with eyes sharp as blades. Robert Lane, in a black suit, earpiece in place, scanning the entrance like he was mapping out a tactical zone, and 2 security officers in plain clothes but unmistakably professional. Everyone inside the bank lobby seemed pulled toward the doors as they opened. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Tellers stopped typing. A young couple signing loan papers stiffened. All eyes shifted to the woman entering, like she was a living symphony of absolute control. Serena didn't ask for directions, didn't glance at the bank's floor plan, didn't pause at the signs. She walked directly to the customer service area, where Darlene was standing behind the counter, and Maya, still in her school uniform, still being held in the waiting area, sat curled up like a child who had just been handed all the unfairness the world had to offer. Maya saw her mother. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She didn't run. But in her eyes was a silent collapse, a breath of hope, the last remaining thread of belief on a day when the entire system had chosen to abandon her. Serena stopped at the service desk. The bank staff behind it held their breath. Darlene looked up, first with curiosity, then with a slight frown as she took in the unfamiliar woman approaching with unreadable authority. "Can I help you?" Darlene asked, still projecting confidence, though a note of caution had crept in. Serena didn't respond immediately. She opened her purse, pulled out a glossy black business card, and laid it gently on the counter. Darlene glanced down. The gold embossed letters read, Dr. Serena Coleman, Chief Executive Officer, Coleman Capital, Strategic Shareholder, Maple Hill Bank. Darlene looked up instantly, her professional demeanor faltering in seconds. I'm sorry, who are you here to see?" "My daughter," Serena replied, her voice quiet but so clear that the entire area fell silent. "The one you and your staff accused of fraud, the one your bank had the police handcuff, right here, in an institution owned by my family." Darlene stood still, lips parted, unable to speak. Around them, customers, staff, even the security guards froze. A young teller behind her fumbled and dropped his pen, then bent down to retrieve it, not daring to raise his head. Serena didn't look around. She stared directly at Darlene, not with anger, not with hatred, but with a force of authority that made the other woman seem to shrink. "What's your name?" Serena asked. "Darlene Whitaker. I'm the branch manager. And you're the one who called the police on a 14-year-old girl carrying her birthday money from her grandmother to open an account?" We noticed some irregularities. The amount was large, and there was no clear documentation. The clear documentation was in the folder my daughter brought, including letters from her school, her student ID, prior savings account statements, and a birthday card from her grandmother. Everything was there, but you chose not to see it. You chose to see skin color. "No, I wasn't being racist. I was just following protocol." "If you had truly followed protocol, you would have entered my name into the system and discovered that I'm not just a customer of this bank. I sit on the board that reviews your staffing decisions, I approve your credit initiatives, and I sign off on the training budget that funds programs for employees like you." The air turned heavy. Darlene's face turned pale. The officers, Langford and Santos, had stepped away by instinct as Serena's security team moved toward Maya to remove the handcuffs. Attorney David Chen pulled out a folder. "We'll be requesting surveillance footage, internal records, and the recording of the call made to the police. From this moment forward, every action you take will be part of an official legal file." Darlene tried to speak, but no sound came out. Serena didn't blink. "You made a serious mistake, not just because the person you targeted is my daughter, but because you've shown this entire bank that the values we've worked to build, fairness, professionalism, equity, can be dismantled in an instant by the bias of one woman in a blazer who thinks she's always right." The tone in the lobby shifted. Staff whispered among themselves. An older customer leaned into his wife and murmured, "That's Serena Coleman. I read an interview with her in Forbes." Darlene stepped back, eyes searching for help, but no one moved toward her. Just then, the main doors opened again. Charles Morrison, the bank's chairman of the board, walked in, tie askew, sweat on his brow, and upon seeing Serena, hurried over. "Serena, I'm sorry. I'm 1 minute too late." Serena nodded slightly, then gestured toward Maya, now freed from the cuffs by security, her eyes still wide with fear. "Charles, they did the unthinkable to my daughter, and they did it under a system you're directly responsible for." Morrison turned to Darlene. "Good God, what have you done?" Darlene had no answer. Morrison sighed. "Serena, I'll handle this. Personally. I don't need apologies, I need action. Fast." Morrison nodded and signaled for HR to begin immediate suspension procedures. Serena walked over to Maya and sat beside her. She didn't hug her, didn't ask questions. She simply placed a hand over her daughter's and whispered, "I'm here." And in Maya's eyes, for the first time that day, the world made sense again, or at least made space for the possibility that justice could still survive if someone dared to stand up at the right moment. The atmosphere inside the main lobby of Maple Hill Bank was no longer the quiet of a financial institution. It had turned into the tense stillness of a courtroom without a judge's bench, but with enough witnesses, accusations, and a verdict about to be declared. Serena stood in the center of the bank's transaction counters. In front of her was Darlene Whitaker, face pale, eyes unfocused. Behind her, Maya, just uncuffed, hands still shaking, gripped her mother's hand like it was the only thing anchoring her to reality. Charles Morrison, chairman of the board, stood beside Serena, visibly rattled, already mentally calculating the massive damage if this incident went public before he could contain it. But Serena didn't let him take a single step ahead of her. "I want an immediate internal investigation," Serena said, calm but with a tone that allowed no delay. "All surveillance footage, call logs, and internal communications from this branch for the past 6 months. I want them in my hands within 24 hours. Morrison nodded, mumbling something in agreement, but not loud enough for anyone to hear clearly. Serena didn't need to hear it. She turned to Officer Langford, her eyes drilling into his badge. "Can you tell me the legal process for detaining a minor under Colorado state law?" Langford flinched slightly but tried to stay composed. "When there's a report of suspicious behavior, we're authorized to detain if there's probable cause to believe." Serena raised her hand, cutting him off. "There is no clause in Colorado law that permits an officer to detain a 14-year-old child based solely on the statement of a bank employee without verifying personal documentation, without recording an intake form, without questioning witnesses, and especially without allowing the child to contact her legal guardian." David Chen stepped forward and pulled a printed document from his case. "This is Colorado Revised Statute 19-2-502, which outlines the protocol for handling minors suspected of civil violations. What took place here constitutes a serious breach." Officer Santos, the female officer, turned away, face losing color. Langford broke into a sweat. Morrison quickly interjected. "I'll notify our legal safety division immediately to coordinate with the city police department. If violations are confirmed, we'll issue a temporary suspension for full investigation." Serena turned her gaze back to Darlene, who now stood visibly shaken. She leaned against the desk, gripping its edge so tightly her knuckles turned white. Lips pressed thin, unable to form a single word of defense. Serena didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to, because every word, every step, every breath she took carried the full weight of a system she had helped build to protect children like her daughter from the small-mindedness and bias Darlene so clearly represented. "I don't need an apology. I need justice," Serena said, her eyes locked on Darlene. "Justice not just for my daughter, the lucky one who happens to have a mother who owns part of this bank, but for every child, every person of color who's ever walked into this place and been rejected simply because they didn't match your expectations." Morrison remained silent. Everyone in the lobby did. Serena stepped aside and pointed toward the computer systems behind the counter. "I want a full audit of all transactions from this branch over the past 6 months, analyzed by how each customer was treated, categorized by race, age, and gender. I want to know how many were asked for unnecessary verification, how many were denied accounts based on individual bias, and I want the names of those responsible for every decision." Morrison nodded, this time firmly enough to not be mistaken for hesitation. Serena turned to Maya and gently brushed her hair aside. "Are you okay?" Maya nodded without speaking, but in her eyes something had changed, from fear to understanding, from personal hurt to systemic rage. Darlene tried to step back, inching toward the exit, but David Chen stepped in her path. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but you'll need to stay for the completion of the administrative report. If you leave now, it will be considered obstruction of an internal investigation." Morrison leaned toward his assistant and whispered, "Contact branch oversight, begin the audit, and get PR on the line. We're preparing for a level 1 crisis." Serena took out her phone and quickly dialed. "Connect me to organizational development. I want the training team to rebuild our customer service protocol system-wide, and I want the first session to begin at this branch within the next 7 days." Hanging up, she turned to Morrison and spoke quietly, but loud enough for the entire room to hear. "I'm not letting my daughter be the only example. I'm making her the beginning." Morrison didn't object. He knew he was speaking with a woman who wasn't just demanding justice for her child, but who also knew how to use her power to change how the entire system operated. And what terrified him most wasn't losing Serena. It was the idea of her walking away, of her withdrawing, silently from within. If that happened, the bank wouldn't just lose a client. It would lose reputation, equity, and the public trust that had taken 2 generations to build. In the corner of the room, a young employee quietly pulled out their phone and texted the internal group chat. The boss lady showed up, and everything's flipping upside down. But it wasn't upheaval, it was correction. It was the act of someone who knew that real power didn't lie in giving orders. It lay in knowing when to say, I don't need an apology, I need justice. Serena's silver gray SUV sped through Denver's sunlit streets, as if trying to outrun the stain now clinging to the name Maple Hill. And more than that, to Maya's childhood. The girl sat in the back seat, staring out the window, not crying, not speaking. Serena sat beside her, one arm wrapped around her daughter, the other still holding a phone filled with half-finished messages to attorneys and internal audit teams. But at that moment, stock holdings, crisis control, justice, none of it mattered more than the silence of her child. Maya had always been the one with the brightest laugh in the house. Even as a little girl, though not born into perfection, she made everyone feel like a beam of sunlight had just rushed through the hallway every time she returned from school. But today that beam went out, not because of something catastrophic, just because of a few words, a pair of handcuffs, and a suspicious look from someone who was supposed to serve customers with the most basic form of dignity. The car turned into a quiet neighborhood in the western part of the city, where Serena had rented a modest home to stay far from media and the glitter of her own reputation. Maya stepped out of the car before Serena could open the door. Serena followed, unlocked the house, and activated the security system. Maya entered the living room, dropped her backpack, and collapsed onto the floor as if her legs could no longer carry the weight of the memories swirling inside her. Maya, Serena called gently, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. Do you want something to drink? Ginger tea? Hot chocolate? Maya shook her head. She didn't look at her mother, didn't answer. Just silence, heavy, thick, filling the room. Serena sat down beside her, not asking anything more. She knew that at this moment, any question would be a violation of the private space of a child who had just been crushed by the world in the cruelest way possible, by denying her right to exist. After a while, Maya finally whispered, They looked at me like I was a real criminal, like I was running away, like I didn't belong there. Serena didn't respond right away. She looked at her daughter, then out the window, where the soft evening sun was spilling onto the sidewalk like a pale golden carpet, gentle and powerless. You know, Serena said quietly, I went through something like this when I was your age. I was shopping for books downtown, wearing my school uniform, carrying a backpack. A store employee followed me around for 10 minutes, assuming I'd steal something. In the end, they asked if I even planned to buy anything. I told them I was picking out a book for my sister's birthday. They just smirked. Maya looked up. And then what happened? Serena smiled faintly, not quite a smile. Then I went home and wrote a letter to that store. I didn't have power, didn't have social media, didn't have a lawyer, but I had words. I wrote that they hadn't just humiliated a student, they had stolen the simple right to walk freely into a public space. The next morning, I taped that letter to their front door. They issued a public apology. Maya stared at her mother, unblinking. But I can't do that. Serena nodded. I know, because you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to go through this. No one should be treated like that, especially not a child who's never done anything wrong. Maya clenched her hands. Who do they think I am, Mom? I don't dress like a rich kid. I don't have fancy shoes. I don't ride in a private car. But since when did people get to decide someone's worth based on the clothes they wear? Serena swallowed hard, her eyes red. That question, sweetheart, is the one I've been asking for 20 years. And I promise you, starting now, I will no longer let that question be asked by the wrong people. I'll turn it into a mandate, a law, a commitment. Maya gave a faint, bitter smile. I think I get it now. The world doesn't see me as a child. They see me as a threat. Serena turned, looking her daughter straight in the eye. You are not a threat. You are a light. And when you walk into a dark place, people see your light as danger because they've gotten used to living in the dark. Maya lowered her head. A single tear rolled down, not from pain, but from a kind of loss that had no name. Something in her had been stolen today. The innocent trust in justice, in equality, in the simple assumption of being accepted as you are. Serena placed her hand over her daughter's heart. You know, when I saw you in handcuffs, I wasn't angry. I was in pain. Not because they humiliated you, but because they shattered the version of the world I tried to build for you. They took the innocence from the little girl I once held in my arms and promised to protect from every storm. The room was quiet again, but this time it was the silence of two people sharing loss, not through tears, not with screams, just with presence. Moments later, Maya stood and walked toward her bedroom. Before entering, she turned back to her mother. I want to be strong like you, but I also want to live in a world that doesn't need me to be this strong, just to survive. Serena didn't answer, because she knew sometimes there are no words soft enough for a child who just fell out of paradise. She only said one thing, barely above a whisper, but it landed like a vow. I will make them pay, not with rage, with change. When Maya closed the door behind her, Serena sat down, opened her laptop. She began typing. One email, then another. A draft for an internal campaign, a list of personnel under investigation, a plan to overhaul customer protocols, and finally a bold title on top of the page, the Horizon Act. She knew if she only punished them, she might win a battle. But if she changed the system, she could win a generation. By the time the morning sunlight touched the porch of Serena's house, the internet was no longer quiet. A security camera clip from inside Maple Hill Bank showing Maya being handcuffed had somehow leaked. The footage was only 27 seconds long, but it was enough to strip bare every illusion of a so-called civilized society. It needed no commentary, no music, no edits. Just the raw image of a black girl in a school uniform standing silently at a service counter. A woman, later identified as Darlene, stood behind it, pointing, her mouth moving with harsh words the camera didn't capture. Then the police walked in, then the crying, then the click of handcuffs, cold and sharp, like the sound of a war being declared between right and wrong. The hashtag number sign "She Was Just a Girl" first appeared at 8:12 a.m. Eastern Time from a TikTok account run by a psychology student named Keisha Lang. Her caption read, I used to be that kid. She could be any one of us, but Maya is only 12 inches. By 8:39, the clip had spread to Instagram, Facebook, then Twitter. By 10:15, CNN broke in with a headline ticker, 12-year-old girl handcuffed inside bank. Nationwide outrage ignites. By noon, nearly 6.4 million views. And by the time the sun dipped behind the horizon, local news vans had begun parking outside Serena's house. But she didn't step outside. She didn't face the media. She didn't hold a press conference. Serena posted only one sentence on her personal account. She just wanted to withdraw her savings to buy a gift for her little brother. They treated her like a criminal. No apology is enough. But change must happen. Within 1 hour, the Post received 1.2 million shares. In Dallas, a group of high school students stood still in silence for 12 minutes on the school lawn to mourn the innocence that was stolen. In Chicago, a white mother posted a photo of her daughter holding a sign. If my child were Maya, would she be cuffed too? In Atlanta, a former Maple Hill employee went public about 3 similar incidents at her branch that had been quietly buried. They had no video, no physical proof, but now they had each other, and they had millions standing with them. That night, Charter's She Was Just a Girl reached the #1 trending position worldwide. Social justice groups began dissecting Maple Hill's internal protocols, exposing gaps in staff training, bias in handling black customers, and a pattern of excessive reliance on law enforcement. A petition titled Justice for Maya launched online, demanding a federal investigation into Maple Hill Bank. It gathered over 2 million signatures in just 36 hours. Inside the boardroom on the 20th floor of the bank's headquarters, the crisis communications director, Ron Halberd, stood before a projection screen, pointing at the stock chart dropping like a bleeding heart. If we don't act now, you're not just going to lose money, you're going to lose the future. Morrison sat there, forehead creased, face flushed red. I need someone to control the media, now at any cost. But then, a young legal team member, Linda Varela, stood up, her voice trembling slightly. We don't need to control the media. We need to listen to it. All eyes turned toward her. Morrison clenched his jaw. What did you just say? Linda swallowed. If that girl were my daughter, I'd do the same thing. And if I were Serena Reynolds, I think she's being far more measured than most of us would be. Morrison stood abruptly, scanning the room. But this time, no one smirked. No one challenged Linda, because the truth was now undeniable. This was no longer about a clip, no longer about an isolated mistake. It was an alarm bell, and no one could silence it anymore. Inside her small house, Serena watched the news coverage. She didn't smile. She didn't feel triumphant. She just sighed, because she knew this wasn't victory. This was only the beginning. Her phone vibrated. A call from Washington. A member of the Federal Civil Rights Committee was requesting an emergency virtual meeting. They wanted to hear her opinion. And for the first time in years, Serena felt that her voice wasn't just reactionary, it was leadership. That night, Maya went to bed early. But before entering her room, she handed her mother a sheet of paper, drawn in colored pencil. It showed a little girl standing in a crowd, holding a sign. I'm not the enemy. I am the future. Serena held the drawing for a long time. Then she brought out an old box and placed it inside. On the lid, she stuck a small label. The origin of change. Outside, the nation was on fire. But inside, a mother was preparing to rewrite how the world treated her daughter and every other child like her. Not with fury, but with law, with awakening, with a promise that no one else would ever have to say again. She was only 12. The call from Washington wasn't just a sign of recognition. It was an invitation into the eye of the reform storm. Serena entered the virtual meeting room alongside representatives from the Federal Civil Rights Commission, the Department of Treasury, and several independent lawmakers. One by one, their faces lit up on the screen, each bearing the weight of tension. But what struck Serena wasn't the seriousness. It was the way they looked at her. They hadn't summoned her to interrogate. They had gathered to listen. Ms. Reynolds, a female senator, spoke first. We've watched the footage, read the reports, and followed the public response. But what troubles us the most is, why does this keep happening? In so many places, for so many years, and no one dares to touch the root of it? Serena stayed composed, her hand resting on a thick notebook. She took a deep breath and responded slowly. Because the system was designed to never be at fault. Only individuals are blamed. When an employee errs, we fire them. When a process is broken, we rewrite the manual. But no one asks, who wrote that manual? And who decides what makes a customer suspicious? No one interrupted. Serena continued, this time flipping open her notebook and pointing to several charts. I have here data from 3 major banks, including Maple Hill. Over the last 5 years, more than 72% of police calls from branches involve Black or brown customers, even though they make up only 18% of average foot traffic. Out of over 600 cases, only 4 led to criminal convictions. The rest were cuffed, humiliated, dismissed, and then erased. An elderly lawyer on the screen nodded slowly. We need the names of those individuals, Serena replied. I will provide them with full statements. But I want to go further. I don't want another cycle of investigations that end in silence. I propose a new policy framework, tentatively titled the Horizon Act. It would establish civil equity standards in the financial services industry, mandate implicit bias training, restrict police referrals unless a clear threat exists, and create an independent oversight body. The room went quiet. A Treasury official asked, what gives you the authority to put your name on a bill like this? Serena looked up. I'm not asking to put my name on it. I'm asking to stand up for it. That sentence, so simple, spread like wildfire. A young member of the internal communications team tweeted it alongside the hashtag the Horizon Act. No one predicted it would become the foundation of a political and social movement, unlike anything the American banking sector had seen. For the next 2 weeks, Serena didn't rest. She was offered a senior advisory role to a bipartisan legislative team tasked with drafting the bill. She wrote, edited, debated, and defended every clause. A team of policy attorneys was hired to translate her convictions into legal frameworks. They reached out to each state seeking allies. At a small press event in New York, a reporter asked her, "Do you think you're too emotionally invested to lead a financial reform effort?" Serena stared straight into the lens. If being wrongly arrested is an emotional matter, then this entire system has never been rational. I don't lead with tears. I lead with data, with people, and with the fact that I've stayed silent for too long. Darlene, the bank manager, was suspended indefinitely and now faces a civil suit from Serena's family. But inside Maple Hill, the ripple effect ran deeper. At least 9 employees resigned. A former branch director issued a public apology. And under mounting pressure from the board, Maple Hill's CEO officially stepped down. In his farewell letter, he wrote, "I failed to see the whole picture. I allowed our policies to become walls instead of bridges. I'm stepping aside so others, like Serena Reynolds, can step forward." During a congressional subcommittee hearing, Serena sat across from a row of lawmakers. One asked, "Do you believe a single bill can change social perception?" Serena responded evenly, "No. But I believe the law can force people to look again. And sometimes it's in that forced reflection that understanding begins." Applause followed, rare for such a formal hearing. Outside the chamber, Maya sat among young activists, listening closely to every word. When her mother emerged, she gripped her hand tightly. "Mom, are you fixing the whole country?" Serena bent down. I'm just fixing the way they look at you." That evening in Civic Center Plaza, a massive screen replayed the now famous bank footage, not to emphasize the pain, but to remind people of why the change began. No one shouted, no one raged. They stood in silence. They listened. And for the first time in years, a nation hardened by noise began to relearn how to see a child. That morning, Roosevelt Square in the Capitol was packed. From a distance, rows of white chairs stretched all the way to the memorial steps. On the main stage, the new emblem of the Horizon Act, a deep indigo circle interwoven with 12 small points of light, was draped in a white cloth, waiting for its moment of unveiling. Every camera lens was already in position. Journalists jostled for space in the front row. But what everyone awaited was not the mayor's speech, nor Senator Hamilton's address, nor the declaration from the Civil Rights Council's Secretary General. They were waiting for an 11-year-old girl, the child who had once been handcuffed simply for standing beside her mother in a bank. When Serena arrived, Maya was at her side, her small hand tucked into her mother's. No one could see the fear on Maya's face, but Serena saw it and said nothing, only squeezing her daughter's hand a little tighter. A host stepped onto the stage, his voice warm and steady as he introduced her. "Today, we are not just celebrating a piece of legislation. We are not merely erecting a legal milestone. We are acknowledging what used to be dismissed as isolated incidents. We are turning to children, like Maya, to understand that if a civilization makes its children afraid of police in a bank, then that civilization needs rewriting. And today, Maya will tell us what the system has forgotten." The entire square fell silent. Maya stepped forward. A small platform had been added so she could reach the microphone. In her hands, she carried no paper. No one had written her speech for her. Maya simply lifted her head and looked directly into the crowd, not trembling, not timid. And then she spoke. "My name is Maya. I used to think banks were where adults kept their money. Then that day, I learned it's also where people keep their prejudice. I don't understand why someone in a suit holding a deed gets called a valued customer, but I, walking in with my mom, get called suspicious." I was really scared. But then, I wasn't scared anymore. Because I saw my mom didn't yell. She just looked up and asked, "Why is my daughter being arrested?" And no one answered. Maya paused. Her eyes scanned the square. No one moved. No phones were raised. People were listening to a child the way they would listen to a president. I'm not afraid of banks anymore. I'm afraid of silence. Because every time grown-ups say nothing, kids learn that this is normal. But it's not. It's not normal to be humiliated for your skin color. It's not normal to be treated like a criminal just because you don't look like an ad. And it's not normal when a child is asked, "Are you really her daughter?" Someone in the crowd started crying. It wasn't a black person. It was a white mother standing beside her adopted Asian child. Maya continued, "I don't hate the woman who did it. She probably thought she was doing the right thing. But right isn't always safe, and safe isn't always fair. I just want to say one thing to the people who write laws, run banks, or hold any power that can make a child feel small. Please don't write policies from where you sit. Write them from where we stand. Lower, smaller, but truer. When Maya stepped down, no one clapped right away. They just stood up, a wave of rising, from front to back, left to right. No one said a word. The applause that followed wasn't because the speech was polished, it was because everyone knew they had just heard the truth. Serena didn't wipe her tears. She wasn't crying from pain, but pride. She knew that moment was something no one could ever take from Maya, a child once labeled, now redefining what dignity means. That evening, Maya's speech was replayed nationwide. No edits, no background music, no words cut. The national broadcast left the 6-minute video untouched, as if afraid to interfere with something sacred. The hashtag #Maya spoke trended globally. One person wrote online, "I've never wanted to apologize to a child so badly." Another added, "We handcuffed a little girl. Now let's unshackle ourselves." In the month that followed, over 40 banks announced new behavior review protocols. More than 500 employees across the financial services industry enrolled in implicit bias training. Several elementary schools added Maya's speech to their civics curriculum. But more importantly, in the small bank branches, the kind no one used to pay attention to, people began looking closer when someone was denied service. Someone began asking, why? A question that seemed simple, but was the first step toward changing an entire system. As for Maya, she returned to school like any other day. She didn't seek special treatment. She didn't brag. But each time she passed a bank, she looked carefully at the sign as if to remind herself, they were wrong. But I won't forget. And in one literature class, when the teacher asked, write a sentence you're most proud of, Maya wrote, my mom said you don't have to shout to be heard. But when I spoke, they stayed silent. That wasn't just the voice of one girl. That was the voice of a generation once misdefined, now reclaiming not attention, but truth. 6 weeks after Maya's speech, Serena held in her hand an envelope stamped in red. In honor of community voices. It was sent from the very bank that had once handcuffed her daughter. Inside was an invitation to return and witness with our executive team the changes that have been implemented, with a handwritten line at the bottom, we need to hear from those we've hurt. Serena didn't say anything to Maya right away. She placed the letter on the table, wondering whether to go. Not because she was afraid, but because she questioned whether this return meant anything. Could a place once symbolic of silence, denial, and institutional protection truly change? And if they were only doing this out of fear, fear of bad press, fear of public backlash, could that change be sincere? But it was Maya who picked up the letter. The girl asked just one question. If we don't go, then the next kid who walks in there won't have anyone standing with them, right, Mom? Serena nodded. And so they went. Monday morning, no press, no cameras, just mother and daughter in plain sweaters, walking from the subway station to the familiar bank branch on Houston Avenue. The building hadn't changed. The signage was still the same navy blue with white lettering, but something inside felt different. The first thing Serena noticed wasn't the people. It was the gaze. Before, when she'd entered, the first look she received was one of scrutiny, as if people were trying to assess what type she was. This time, the first look came from a new security guard, brown-skinned in his 40s, who stood politely and greeted them. Good morning, ma'am. How can I assist you today? Serena gave a soft smile and shook her head. They entered the customer waiting area. A large poster caught Maya's eye. Our commitment, no judgments, no assumptions, no discrimination. Beneath the slogan were photos of 6 employees, diverse in age, gender, and race. The staff member assigned to welcome them was a white woman with gray hair, clearly new. She stepped forward, extended her hand, and said, my name is Marion. First, I'm not going to apologize, because I don't have the right to do that on behalf of those who were here before. But I do want to thank you. Because of you, we had to relearn how to see people. Serena nodded without a word. Marion led them to a small meeting room in the back. No flowers, no banners, just 3 people. Marion, an internal policy coordinator, and an older man in a suit with no tie who introduced himself as the person responsible for auditing service culture. He looked at Maya, then set down his pen and said, "I don't want to begin with a defense. I just want to ask, young lady, if you could change one thing, just one, in this bank, what would it be?" Maya looked at him for a moment. Then she spoke slowly, without hesitation. "I would change the first question." "The first question?" He raised an eyebrow. Maya nodded. "That day, the first thing they asked my mom was, 'What are you here for?' I think instead of asking customers, 'What are you here to do?' the bank should ask, 'How can we help you today?' Because one question is about suspicion, the other is about service." The room fell completely silent. No one spoke for 10 seconds. Then Marion quietly scribbled the sentence into her notebook without comment. The meeting ended after 40 minutes. No big announcement, no press conference, no flowery thanks. Just one small detail. As they left, Serena noticed that in the exact corner of the lobby, where the guard once dragged Maya away, now stood a small bookshelf. On it were 7 children's comic books, 3 boxes of crayons, and a sign that read, "For children accompanying their parents." Not everyone would have noticed, but Serena did. She looked at Maya. The girl said nothing. She simply stepped forward, opened one of the books, and silently slipped a small sticky note inside. Serena didn't read it right away, but after they left the bank, as the subway car gently rocked over the tracks, she opened it. On the note, Maya had written carefully, "This used to be a place that scared me, but today I'm leaving behind a story so that the next child who walks in has something to read, instead of tremble." No cameras, no hashtags, no golden plaques. Sometimes the way to change a place is to return to it, not to collect a debt, but to give back what that place once took away. Maya never returned to that bank a third time, but among the staff at that branch, they kept telling the same story. Every month, a child, no one knew exactly who, would leave behind a book with a tiny bookmark. And underneath those marks, people had started writing their own small notes. "Thank you for helping restart this place." As for Serena, when asked later if she felt like she had won, she just smiled and said, "I didn't need to win. I just needed Maya not to lose." A year after the incident at the bank, Maya was no longer the timid girl who once had handcuffs around her wrists while the adults stood silent. She was still a regular high school student, still liked reading by the window, still wore worn-out sneakers, and still called her mom Sister Serena whenever she was being playful. But everything around Maya had changed. More importantly, what Maya left behind, in silence, was beginning to shift an entire system. The Maya Initiative was passed by the state legislature just 6 months after the event. There was no fanfare, no live broadcast, but it was effective. The policy mandated that all financial institutions, hospitals, schools, and public facilities establish a bias response program, including recurring training modules, an impartial grievance intake office, and, most crucially, a public commitment to disclose cases where protocols failed due to bias. The goal wasn't to assign blame, but to transform. And that phrase, not to blame, but to transform, was adopted as the initiative's official motto. Serena didn't accept any form of compensation from the government. She declined every invitation for TV interviews, even turned down an honorary advisor role on the initiative's steering committee. She simply sent a handwritten note, brief and clear. "I don't need a title. I just need to know the next child won't have to learn silence too soon." Even so, Maya's name quietly found its way into nearly every corner of the reform model. Some banks in California, Illinois, and New York began piloting Maya Corners, small children's reading nooks in waiting areas with pastel-colored sticky notes so children could write how they felt while accompanying their parents. Strangely, none of this was directed by central leadership. Branches did it on their own. In some locations, the managers didn't even know who Maya was, but still went ahead. Because a child once wrote, "I feel scared when I don't know who in here would protect me if something happened." One anonymous, handwritten sentence made the adults stop and rethink. At a national symposium on equity in public services, a keynote speaker, who was also a bank director, ended her talk with a slide that contained no text. Just an image of Maya standing in that courtroom, holding her handwritten note, with a caption, I don't need them to apologize. I need them to understand. The entire room stood in applause, not for the speaker, but for the girl, the one who didn't need a platform to be heard. Maya's high school, once the place where she was shunned by peers for appearing on the news, had now created a mentoring program called Voice Without Mic. The program invited students who had once experienced silent hurt to come and share, not on camera, not for social media, just to be listened to. Serena never attended those events. She chose a different path, becoming a quiet support figure for single mothers whose children had been harmed by injustice. There was no funding, but she received thank you notes from small community groups. Those who had once been voiceless now had a space to speak. One symbolic detail, though small, stood out. Near the end of the school year, Maya's high school hosted an exhibition titled The Untold Stories of This City. Every student was invited to submit one item that symbolized something meaningful. Maya submitted nothing, but her teacher received a small box. Inside was a replica of the sticky note Maya had once left at the bank, along with a picture book marked with the initials Maya-02. No explanation, but everyone understood. Legacy isn't about having your name etched into stone. It's about what you leave behind, so others can carry it forward. In an internal meeting at the mayor's office about enforcing anti-bias hiring policies, a young staffer remarked, "If only celebrities speak out, people will say it's for show. But when a child, no stage, no speech, no TV appearance, just stands tall, still kind, the whole system can't pretend not to see." The mayor nodded, no rebuttal. At the end of that year, a small publishing house quietly released Letters from Maya, a collection of unofficial notes Maya had written over time. Letters to her grandmother, doodles during class, sticky notes tucked inside library books. None were signed, yet thousands shared them, not because the writing was profound, but because of the rare gentleness it offered in a harsh world. When asked if Maya knew what she had left behind, Serena simply said, "She wasn't trying to leave anything behind. She was just trying not to lose herself. And that, I believe, is the greatest legacy of all." On a Saturday morning, Maya passed by the old bank branch. She didn't go in, but she paused for a moment. A young boy was coloring with crayons at the children's corner, softly reading the sign aloud. No judgment, no assumptions, no discrimination. He turned to his mom and asked, "Why does it say that?" The mother knelt down and replied, "Because once someone was treated unfairly, and they didn't stay silent." Maya smiled. No explanation, no glance back. Then she continued walking. Legacy doesn't always lie in monuments or medals. Sometimes it lives in a small corner, a new habit, a better question, and a child who no longer feels afraid to walk into a place that once hurt someone else. Do you feel it? Something is changing. Not because a celebrity spoke out, not because of $1 million campaign, but because of a child who didn't seek power, didn't retaliate, just stood still and didn't bow her head. A handwritten note, a child's question, a moment of injustice, seen and never forgotten. This story may have ended, or maybe you will be the one to write the next chapter. If you've ever witnessed a moment of injustice, don't stay silent. If you've ever been judged because of how you look, your gender, your skin, your background, remember, you are not alone. If Maya's story moved you, if it made you feel more love, more protection for the small, quiet things, leave a comment below. We want to hear your story. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, deserve to be part of our conversations, then hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss a video. One small subscription from you could help another voice no longer go unheard. Share how this made you feel. Stand up for what's right and help us amplify the quietest voices because they are often the strongest.